In the 1970s, America started its famous war on drugs. That was during the time of President Richard Nixon. 10 years later, in 1981, Ronald Reagan became president in the States, and he went hard on the war on drugs. And Congress went ahead to delegate a huge amount of money to fight drugs. But the less known effects of that war on drugs was how much it created inequality in that country, how many people were incarcerated for non-violent victims, for non-violent crimes, and how many African-American families were affected by that war on drugs that many have termed as a war on other races. Moving forward, America has, of course, gone easier, and they have compromised on some of their harsher rules on the war of drugs, but the effects of those measures taken by Reagan and those following administrations seem to be deeper than the benefits gotten from that. Where am I going with this? President William Ruto of Kenya has declared that he's going hard on drugs himself. He has sent out a stern warning to drug dealers and even drug users as he starts his term as president. The question I'm asking the professor today is, what are the effects on such a blanket war on drugs? What is the context that could be lost? And what are the benefits are we likely to get if Ruto goes all in against drugs? Welcome to the show today. This is Let's Talk Love, where we have discussions of family, love, and country. And the man next to me is Professor Herman Manyora, Dr. Love himself. How are you doing, Prof?
Fine. You?
Such a long introduction I've done there.
Yes.
You like it?
Not too much.
Well, there is it.
It's a
War on drugs.
Yes.
Ruto is taking the Reagan way, and looking at how that has played out in America, which of course is a different country with different social dynamics. How do you see playing it here? How big of a problem do we have for our families, our children?
You know, this country is known for talking. Just talk, not action. And this country is also known for playing to the gallery.
Yeah?
Trying to do things to please outsiders. So you start EACC and corruption bodies so that you can convince the West that you are fighting corruption. And so even drugs, because we know drugs, the drug issue affects America more than almost the rest of the world. That's why America is interested not just with the drug issues within America itself, but in the source, places like, Latin America, Central America.
Yeah, Colombia.
And so on and so forth. The trafficking routes, again. America is interested in international drug dealers. So Kenya could be becoming a small boy in that orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I will not be surprised if Ruto is doing this just to please somebody somewhere.
Some of his friends in the West.
See, another thing about Kenya, and on the two things of corruption, and say drugs.
Yeah.
These are simple things. We don't have drug dealers in this country.
No, not as serious as in America.
We just have people who sell drugs to our children. You can arrest them one afternoon, all of them. I'm not a policeman. Why can't government just tell Manyora, this is a squad, these are your resources, give us all the drug peddlers. I'll arrest all of them. They are known.
You think there are few of these drugs come from centralized places?
They are done by foreigners, Nigerians, what? They can cry if they want. I'm mentioning them. Their country is true. People who sell drugs in Nairobi West, around Kasarani, where students stay, you go to Kangemi, you'll see. These are known people who peddle drugs. In Mombasa, who doesn't know them? They're all known. So it's not a question, something you want to announce to the world, I will do. Just arrest this. Just like corruption. There's no corruption in this country. It's just theft. Just arrest the thieves and send them to committee. And
it makes sense there, Prof, because again, looking at that Reagan war on drugs is the biggest victims of that war or the small-time users, small-time peddlers, which is something you see here. The big kahunas, the Pablo Escobars and all the big people who were involved in that business, they were almost not touched. And I'm looking at it like this. If Ruto indeed goes hard on drugs, goes on arresting spree, he's going to arrest a lot of young people, maybe smoking marijuana or these peddlers selling it. But as you said, it's never going to get to the real source. Then is it not more harm than good?
It's not a question of harm or good, it's just a question of not being serious.
Is not serious?
No, nobody's serious in this country. If you are serious about, we know drugs are there in this
But
country.
he sounded very
We know
serious.
they have spoiled children. We know where they are peddled.
Yeah.
Even where we are here, outside the gate there.
They're
Are they
everywhere.
not being sold in broad daylight?
They're everywhere.
You tell me the police are not, they don't know. So they know, they can see. We are not serious as a people. We don't have a serious drug problem. I have told you for America, it's not just within America. It's going to the source in places like Colombia. It's look at the route. There's a very complicated route.
Yeah.
Drugs can leave Colombia, but it can go to India, then come to Kenya and go to America. Those routes. So for America, it's a complex thing they are dealing with. The source, the route, the international peddlers, including compliance of nations, governments, or parts of governments.
That are complying with these criminals.
Yeah.
So it's all about extradition and stuff.
For
like
them,
that.
it's difficult. And having arrested people like in Kenya, they are cashiers. How to get them to America to stand trial? The cooperation on extradition between two countries, America and the involved country. You need to work on some laws, on what we call protocols. So for America, it's a big thing. For Kenya, just first of all, I will ask Ruto, President, can you arrest these foreigners who are selling drugs to our children? Please, just the foreigners. We shall deal with the rest later.
He knows them?
Who doesn't know them?
Ruto knows them?
But Ruto is not Ruto. Ruto is not William Samoei Ruto. Ruto is the president. It's an institution.
He ought to know.
His government. This government is his. He refers to this government as my government. That has all the infrastructure, DCI, anti-narcotic division, anti-terrorist ATPU, and everything. Everything. He has everything. He knows. Who doesn't know? If somebody stood here to tell me, Manyora, what are you saying? I will tell him things he has never heard. Because we all know.
It's
We
common
know
knowledge.
foreigners are selling drugs to students to children in this country. Who doesn't know? There's one who was sent back home and he came back. Let me not mention names. I'm an old man. I don't want to go to jail.
And they're always on the news.
I don't want to go to jail. I'm too old to be put
Yeah?
to stand trial and go to jail. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, we know they have been arrested. We pretend to send them home to their countries in Nigeria or wherever, but then they come back and begin spoiling our children. So if the president is serious about drug, let him start by doing the obvious, the low-hanging fruits. Arrest all foreigners who are selling drugs to our children. They'll be found anywhere around certain places where hostels are. Where, they are so easy to arrest. Arrest all of them, send them back to their countries, and make it difficult for them to come back.
Make it difficult to come
If
back.
they come back, put them in jail for 10 years.
But you said the president is joining an orbit that is really not a significant player in terms of that. And watching him make that declaration, I think 2 days ago, he sounded so serious. Yet here you are saying that it's just
I've told you
empty,
this. I've told you
hot
this.
air.
For a country like Kenya, for a president of a country like Kenya to go public on drugs, not alcohol. No, alcohol is very local.
It's different.
Like Uhuru did. That is a very local thing. But on drugs, I can tell you are addressing yourself to the international community, especially America.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you are addressing. Because what happens here in the drug industry affects America. I've told you the roots. Because it's so difficult to take things to America direct from Mexico, from Colombia, wherever. They have devised methods. You take these things like to India, and then back you put things in Kenya. Then from Kenya now, where there's less surveillance and less strictness, we ship them to America. And
The least
things-
expected routes.
So to America, I told you the source and the route. Kenya is a route, could be a route, not a source of drugs.
Yeah.
A route.
A route.
Or a home to the dealers, like the Akashas, who are here and they are in Netherlands, and they are in another country, and they are coordinating the shipment of the drugs to America. So if you talk here about drugs being a problem and you are going hard on them, I can more or less suspect that you are talking to the American ear, not to the Kenyan ear. Yeah.
And what is he to benefit? Because
Let me
Reagan
say-
benefited big.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
Before you ask that, don't forget I'm an old man, I could forget.
All right.
Because if drugs were your concern as the president of Kenya, before you talk what you have talked, you'll have arrested all these people who sell drugs to our children.
Yeah, that's the most...
Because it will be your love for your country and seeing how drugs are spoiling young people in this country. So you'll not even talk to anybody.
You
just call them, the police, IG, tell him, na mkuje with your guy in charge of anti-narcotics. Mkuje kwa ofisi yangu, I will offer you breakfast at 8.
Let's do this.
And this breakfast is 1 hour. By 9 o'clock, even before you leave the gates of State House, I want to see action. And before I take my lunch, which I'm inviting you to today again, I want to know how many drug peddlers have been arrested and how many of them are foreigners.
All right.
So by the time I go to bed today, I know 300 peddlers will have been arrested, out of which we have 50 Nigerians and something like that. Then later, you can now talk about the American problem.
Yes.
Yeah, and how Kenya can help.
After
Because we have to help. Because what happens in America affects us. What happens here affects the Americans. And if there's something we can do to prevent drug peddlers and dealers from spoiling American children, we as a country and as people, we will not hesitate to do it, and we should not hesitate to do it.
Right, let's wrap it up like this, Prof. President Ruto seems to be quite conservative in comparison to his predecessor. And one of the things that dirtied or ruined the otherwise white linen of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency were those accusations of there were people in his government who were involved in high-level drug trafficking. We've had issues of FBI lists, the Akashas, you mentioned them, and all that stuff. My question, last question I'm asking you, could it be that inside the current government, President Ruto's government, there are people who he has to put away if he is to fight drugs? Let me put it like that.
To be fair to Uhuru Kenyatta, the list you are referring to came long before Uhuru became president.
It did?
Yes.
Then I'm in the dark then.
The names that were mentioned, serious politician, judges of the High Court, blah, 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 members of parliament, those lists, that list came before Uhuru became president. So you could be saying, how much has he done about it?
Not much.
There are people who have been arrested. There are things that have happened. You could be arguing that the same could be true of Ruto's government. I would not be surprised.
No?
Drug dealers are people who penetrate high there. Otherwise, without that cover of protection, how can you do drugs? Serious drugs.
Right.
The Akashas will not have operated, and these are the high-level drug dealers, international drug dealers. You cannot work without protection from government. So I would not be surprised if within the structures of government, there are people there, either working with them or protecting them, or even being them people. It's not, it happens even in America. The drug problem is not a small problem. Otherwise, people like America would have, with all their power, they would have sorted it out. So it will not be surprising to find that there are people in government either doing it or offering the protection cover. It won't be surprising to anybody.
Won't be a shock, folks, that the discussion we've had with Prof today, we're talking about the issue of drugs in the country, the issue of drugs in the world, and Prof says the president is just paying lip service to his claims that he's going to fight drugs in the country. And see you next time. My name is Kimathi. This is Let's Talk Love.